The message came on a rainy Tuesday. I had just finished grading my high school students' essays and was scrolling through my phone when I saw the name, Linda Harper. It took me a moment to recognize it, my father's sister. We hadn't spoken in years. I opened the message. Emma, I know this is sudden, but your father is very sick. He's asking for you. Please call me. My chest tightened. My father, Robert Harper. The man who walked out when I was 3, never looked back, never sent money, not even a birthday card. My mom worked 2 jobs to raise me. I remember her crying at night when she thought I was asleep. Now, after 2 decades of radio silence, he's suddenly interested in reconnecting. I tossed the phone aside. My roommate Jenna looked up from the couch. Everything okay? I forced a smile, just a message from a ghost. I didn't reply. For 3 days I ignored Linda's message. But then came another, more urgent one. He's in the hospital now, stage IV. They don't know how long he has. He just wants to talk. I felt a twist in my stomach. Not guilt, not exactly, more like confusion, anger definitely, and something else I didn't want to name. I called my mom that night. She was washing dishes, the sound of water and clinking plates in the background. "It's your decision, honey," she said softly. "You don't owe him anything." That was the thing, I didn't. But I also didn't know if walking away would bring me peace. I ended the call and sat on the porch, the Texas summer air thick and humid. Jenna brought me a glass of iced tea. "Are you going to see him?" I shook my head. "I don't think so. He's a stranger to me." Jenna sat beside me without pressing further. We watched the fireflies blink in the dusk. Somewhere deep inside, I wondered what kind of man he had become, and if any part of me needed to know. The next day I got a call, not a text, from Aunt Linda. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Emma," she said, voice trembling. "He's in the ICU now. It's bad. I wouldn't be calling again if it wasn't serious. He wants to see you. He keeps saying your name." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hang up. The other part kept listening. "Your grandmother's been praying nonstop. Your Uncle Tom offered to pay for your flight if money's an issue," she added quickly. I clenched my jaw. Money isn't the problem. There was a long pause. "Then what is?" "He left me," I snapped. "He left us." Why does everyone act like that didn't happen? I could hear her exhale, shaky and sad. "People make mistakes, Emma, some worse than others." I didn't reply. After the call, I sat at the dining table numb. I scrolled through old photos on my mom's Facebook. Birthdays, school plays, graduations. Not once was he there, not even a shadow. Jenna slid a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of me, saying nothing. I stared down at the food, appetite gone. Some ghosts don't haunt you until they knock on your front door again. By Thursday, my phone was a battlefield. Missed calls from Linda, voicemails from my grandmother sobbing, even a text from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. "He's dying. Don't you have a heart?" I threw the phone onto the couch and paced the living room, heart pounding. The guilt wasn't mine to carry, but somehow it still stuck to my skin like sweat. Jenna finally spoke. "You don't have to explain yourself to anyone, Em. You lived through what they didn't." I slumped into the armchair, burying my face in my hands. What if I regret not going? What if I go and it ruins everything I've built to move on? She sat on the floor beside me. "You're allowed to feel both things, anger and curiosity, hurt and pity. You don't have to pick just one." Her words stuck with me long after she left for work. I stared at the blank TV screen, seeing my reflection. Behind my eyes was a child still waiting for a man who never came back. The day passed in slow motion. By sunset, I was still in the same spot. Maybe tomorrow I'd decide. Maybe tomorrow I'd face him, or maybe I wouldn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing a hospital bed, tubes, machines beeping, and a frail man whispering my name. Not out of love, maybe, but regret. Or guilt. At 2 a.m., I found myself in the hallway, pacing again. I opened the hall closet and pulled out a cardboard box labeled Dad, Mom's Stuff. I hadn't touched it in years. Inside were old photos, yellowed paper, a few wrinkled birthday cards he had sent but never mailed, unsent letters in my name. I sat on the floor, surrounded by memories I'd never lived. One photo stopped me cold. Me at 4 years old on a swing, him pushing me mid-laugh. He looked young, tanned, tired, but happy. That moment had existed. That version of him had existed. I heard Jenna's soft steps behind me. She sat down cross-legged without a word. "Why didn't he send these?" I asked quietly, holding a card that read, "Happy 6th birthday, Em." I'm sorry. She didn't answer, she just leaned her head on my shoulder. Tears finally came, hot and unexpected. Not for the man he was, but the father he could have been, and for the little girl who had waited far too long. Friday morning came with a heaviness in my chest. I hadn't made a decision, but my feet seemed to know where to go. I found myself at the local bus station, standing in front of the ticket counter. "One to Houston," I said before I could stop myself. The hospital was there. The ride was 4 hours. I spent most of it staring out the window, the Texas countryside rolling past. My mind churned, replaying childhood moments, some real, some imagined. When I arrived at the hospital, the antiseptic smell hit me like a wall. I followed the signs to ICU, heart hammering in my chest. At the nurse's desk, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes looked up. "Robert Harper?" I asked. She nodded. "Room 414, he's still with us." I stood outside the room for a long time, staring through the small window in the door. He looked nothing like I remembered, older, thinner, grayer, machines surrounded him, tubes everywhere. His face was slack, lips parted slightly. He looked small, almost like a child. I didn't go in, not yet, I just watched. That was all I could manage. I don't remember pushing the door open. One moment I was standing in the hallway, the next I was inside room 414. It was quiet, except for the soft beep of the heart monitor and the rhythmic hum of the oxygen machine. "Robert," my father stirred slightly, his eyes fluttering open. They were hazel like mine. He blinked at me, confused, then recognition crept in. "Emma," he rasped. I stood frozen. I hadn't prepared for this, not for his voice. Not for how weak he looked. "You came," he whispered, and a tear slipped down his cheek. I don't know why," I said honestly, voice shaking. He smiled faintly. "That's enough." We sat in silence for a long time. I didn't take his hand. I didn't cry, I just sat on the chair beside the bed, staring at the floor. "I wanted to be better," he said suddenly, "but I was scared. I failed you, your mom, everyone." I didn't answer, I didn't forgive, but I didn't leave either. Sometimes showing up is all the closure we get. The nurse brought in a tray of soup and gelatin, placing it on the side table with quiet efficiency. I hadn't moved from the chair. My limbs felt heavy, like my body didn't belong to me anymore. Robert watched me. "You look just like your mother," he said, voice hoarse. I flinched but didn't respond. Has she been well?" "You don't get to ask that," I said flatly. He nodded slowly, accepting it. "Fair." A long silence stretched between us. The kind that holds the weight of years. "I used to keep a photo of you in my wallet," he said. "From your 3rd birthday, you had chocolate on your cheeks." I swallowed hard, looking away. "I wanted to send you letters, I wrote them. I just couldn't face you, not after I left." I clenched my hands in my lap. "Cowardice isn't an excuse. She raised me alone, she never complained, you chose not to be there." His eyes shimmered. "I know." The beeping of the monitor filled the room. "I'm not here to forgive you," I added. "I didn't ask you to." He closed his eyes and sank slightly into the bed. But somehow, saying it out loud felt like the first breath after drowning. I stayed until the sun began to set. The shadows in the room grew longer, and the sound of the heart monitor became the background to my spinning thoughts. Robert had fallen asleep, his breathing shallow but steady. I hadn't said much. Neither had he, but somehow the silence didn't feel as suffocating anymore. A soft knock on the door broke the stillness. A nurse stepped in quietly with a clipboard. "We'll be starting evening rounds soon," she whispered. "You're welcome to stay, but it'll get noisy." I nodded. "I'll go soon." She glanced at Robert and smiled gently. "He asked if you were really here after you left the room earlier. He wasn't sure he'd imagined it." I swallowed hard. "Yeah. I'm here." The nurse nodded and left. I stood up, legs stiff, and walked over to the window. The sky outside was streaked with orange and purple. I rested my forehead against the glass, my reflection overlaying the city beyond. Behind me, Robert stirred again. "Emma," he murmured, eyes still closed. "Yeah, I'm here." "Okay," he whispered and smiled faintly. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't healing. But maybe it was something, a beginning or an ending, I wasn't sure which yet. The next morning I returned to the hospital early. The hallways were quieter, the lights softer. A nurse at the front desk saw me and gave a small nod. "He passed during the night," she said gently, peacefully. "In his sleep." I stood there for a long time, not quite sure what I was supposed to feel. Relief, sadness, emptiness, maybe all of them at once. In room 414, the bed was already made, the machines cleared away. Just a bare mattress and silence. I walked in anyway. There was a small envelope on the bedside table, my name written in shaky handwriting. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single photo, me as a child on a swing. The same one he had mentioned. On the back, a note: I never stopped thinking about you. I'm sorry I didn't know how to be the man you needed. No signature, just that. I stared at the photo until the image blurred through my tears. For the first time in years, I let myself cry, not just for him, but for everything we never got to say and everything we never got to be. I left the room without looking back, the photo in my pocket. He was gone. And somehow I was still here, still breathing, still moving forward.